So yeah, man, I was saying I quite enjoy it. I quite like it. We're sharing the interviews. It makes my life a whole lot easier. I can go and take a piss in the middle of the interview.
Yeah, but you still do most of the talking. I'm just in the background.
I'll tell you what, I'll go off, have a cup of tea, and you two chat, and that will work fine. God,
right, I've got to share this, haven't I? So everybody can see it.
Yeah.
We will be live in a couple. I haven't put the dongle on, so everyone knows how unprofessional.
Not
Sorry,
dongle.
everybody. Let's get. I know the dongle, the proverbial countdown. Let's start.
Oh look, 1:55.
Yeah, we got the dongle now. The proverbial countdown has begun.
Okay, with bated breath.
Oh, this is cool.
This is causes the tension to rise. I hope you realise.
No.
Yeah.
Look at the red dot going around and around.
Exactly.
You are feeling calm.
When you eventually turn the screen on, I will be asleep. There you go. I quite like sleeping in front of the computer. It seems like a reasonable thing to do.
Oh, it's a lovely thing to do. But I tell you what, I did that the other day, and in the middle of my dreams, I started having a dream that someone was attacking me with an axe, and I woke up and there was a horror podcast on. Like all sorts of horrible stuff.
Think yourself lucky something didn't come out the screen and attack you.
Well, that's not how modern technology works, Mel. I think you've got carried away with some kind of sci-fi filmmaking.
You wait, AI will eventually have a hand reaching out of your screen and grabbing you by the throat.
Oh, by that point, AI will have done away with us and we'll have no idea why.
There'll be no humans, just AI.
It's not going to tell us why, is it?
Well, no, they're not going to give us warning, are they?
Of course not. It's clever enough than us making empty threats.
Oh, I don't know. A chatbot apparently has issues if you ask it who it is. Apparently, it gets its interest.
Oh, that chatbot, ChatGPT. I've been looking at some of its responses. I mean, admittedly, it's pretending to be human, and I'm sure human within that weird situation would sound like that. But we've lost our county dongle again. What's going on there?
No, because
it definitely didn't get rid of it.
Down to 0.
Let's set it to 2 minutes then, and hopefully everyone will be patient enough to wait for the 2 minutes to go while the room fills up. There we go.
Oh no,
it's a myriad of technical nightmares at the moment, isn't it?
Tension mounts again. Oh. I haven't even got a dog to stroke so I can calm down.
Oh, my dog's too far away to stroke at this moment. And from a hard work day at work, my dog is taking the best option of being soundly and fastly asleep.
Very good idea. There we go. That's what I'll do. I'll tell you what, I'll pop off and you two chat. I'm sure you've got loads to talk about.
So when the interview begins, are we going to see a semi-comatose Patti?
Yeah, I'm going to be snoring in the background.
Comatose, semi-comatose, you name it, it could happen.
And it's 1, 13, 12, 11. Oh my gosh.
I'm down to 0.
The countdown is beginning. You're down to 0 and it's disappeared
again.
Well, I tell you what, since we're at 8 minutes, 8:04, I think we can begin. Should we begin, everybody?
Why not?
Yeah.
Yes, let's do that.
I'm at 8:05.
Oh, is that you? Oh, that's cool.
That is me. Oh, wow. Hello, everybody. How you doing? The myriad of technical nightmares do continue. I think we're nearly there. We're there. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Whining On. My name is Matthew Bowden, and today I'm joined again with Melvin Altwog. Hey, Melvin.
Hi, mate.
And we're very, very lucky and blessed to have, putting her story into the archive today, the wonderful Miss Patti Webb. Hey, Patti, how you doing?
Hi. Hello. Good evening. I'm still awake. It's all right.
Well, it's lovely to still have you here. Now, we don't have a huge amount of time, and we had a quick chat before about your story, and we've got, I think a short novel been written from the notes about it. So I feel like we shouldn't waste any more time and begin with a story. Patti, you've spent a lifetime within the creative practice. Tell us how it began. what was the early life for Miss Webb?
Ms. Webb. I was 3 years old when I started dancing, and the reason for beginning dancing was because I think 3 months I had infantile eczema, so that meant that I was in bed at night. They secured me so that I couldn't move around, so I couldn't itch as a baby. So the result of that was I didn't walk until I was 2. And when I did walk, it was sort of very stiff and whatever. So I was sent to dancing classes, and I loved it. Just loved it.
And were your parents dancers? Was your family a family of thespians or artists or people in creative practice?
Well, my dad was a builder, so no, I don't think so. But my mother had wanted to. Well, she trained as a dancer, and then World War II kicked off, and she was asked to join what was then Sadler's Wells Ballet, precursor of the good old Royal Ballet. But that involved going to America with the company, and my grandmother wouldn't give her permission. She was under 21, which at that point was the age you were allowed. You had to have parental permission if you were younger than 21. So thwarted, she went and joined the WAF, I believe, because you didn't have to have parental permission because there was a war on. So that was the end of her dancing career. So yeah, I'm quite sure there was quite a lot of projected, parental ambitions onto me. But to be honest, I really didn't get that, not for years.
What was the dancing class like? Was it ballet? Was it like we imagine from?
I did skipping.
What?
Skipping.
Skipping with a rope.
No, just skipping. Yeah.
Oh.
Around the room. And then we did chasing butterflies. And then we did, then we galloped a bit. And then later, I started doing classical ballet. And I did everything. I did classical ballet. I did Greek and natural movement, national dance. What else did I do? What was then called modern dance. Loads, all of it.
Yeah, but when did you start doing all of that? You went from jumping around.
Skipping.
What did you go to next?
Ballet, I think, very early.
And so you're talking about the ages of sort of 5 and 6 and 7.
5 years old, yeah.
And did you love it, or is it something that you did because it's something that you would took to do?
Seriously, I loved it. I loved it for years. I still loved it at a point when I really shouldn't have been doing it anymore. But it was.
What was it about it that you loved? I mean, I know it's hard as a kid to be so cognizant of one's own process, but looking back on it now, what do you think at that age was the thing you loved about it?
As a kid, it's not such a thing. But as you get older, most people don't walk around with their arms, fully stretched. They don't leap across rooms. That sense of inhabiting space, broad gestures, all of that. As an adult, very few people, apart from performers, will actually do that. And then precision and perfection actually is what it's all about. It's all about perfection as a dancer. If your hand is that or that, it's not good enough. It has to be there. It's a complete, and also you get obsessed with yourself in the mirror, which is the other thing that happens. You spend so much time in front of the mirror. But we used to be, when we moved to the coast, I can remember an old lady tinkling on the piano. They were all old, but probably about my age now. And then our grey-haired dancing teacher, just took behind her a wall of mirrors, and that was how life went. Really, it was
I'm thinking of Billy Elliot.
yeah, very much.
Was it like that?
Like that, but not in a gym. We had studios, we had mirrors, so we were a bit more sort of privileged, I suppose.
And do you mind me asking what year this was? Like when you were 3, when you first began? I know it's cruel to ask a lady these things,
That's
but
terribly cruel. 56.
56. And so when you began at 3 and then you were doing it at 5, 6, 7, the complexity of the craft was being imbued into you. You were learning it. Did you have a vision of the future at that point? Were you doing it thinking, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, and my life is set out as a dancer?
My mum used to tell me I was going to be a prima ballerina.
But that's what your mum told you. What
Yeah.
did you feel about it?
I didn't particularly. I loved the music. I loved the movement. I loved the movement. It's the sense of movement as a training dancer, and I loved the doing it over and over again until you got it right. I think I was more obsessed with rehearsing than I ever was with performing. I was not a natural performer, but I was a natural rehearser. I suppose.
What do you mean by saying you weren't a natural performer? I mean, I get a sense of what you're saying, but I want to know from your perspective.
I was very shy. I was very anxious. I didn't talk much. Life at home wasn't a whole heap of fun, just not to get into that too much. So dance was a place I went to escape from home, really. And you didn't have to speak. Yeah. Later on, that became more of an issue, but at that point in time, that was perfect by me. Didn't have to open my mouth, didn't have to say anything, didn't have to have an opinion, just make perfect positions and learn. And that's the other thing. You keep learning. It's sort of a never-ending process.
Was there some kind of? It sounds like there was a meditation within the process.
Oh, gosh, they wouldn't have ever said that then. It was more like being in the army than meditating. But yes, you had, because you always, as a dancer, you're always working to music. So you've always got this background of, unless it's a particularly bad pianist, you always had that background of just very soft classical music going, onwards.
Well, I mean this by, the catharsis of it. You say that you were having a hard time in other settings, and then you'd go to the studio, and the issues of life would be left at the door.
Yeah.
You'd be focused on the process and the craft and the actions and the movements, and that was, and what I mean by meditative is that took you to a different place. It sounds like.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, you're in a sort of fantasy world, if you like, because you're in a world where you're seeing your reflection, you're seeing all the other people in the room reflections. You're perfecting it. You're trying to get it right. You're working very, very hard. And yeah, nothing else matters in that moment. You're in that moment, in that space, doing that. What I think most dancers will say is, when you're in it and enjoying it, it's a remarkable place to be.
That's
And
because you're in the flow. You're in the
flow.
here and now and in the flow.
Yeah, very
which
much
is
so.
key to a lot of things. But that fits with the whole meditation idea as well.
Absolutely. Now I would say that, but at the time it was sort of, get it right, get it right, get it right, sort of.
So I tried to press you a bit earlier about this idea of you being young, being in this setting and thinking about the future and seeing a career in the future for you within that. And I got a sense that you weren't thinking that. You were just in the moment.
No, it's very
But then
go on.
Yeah, please carry on. No, please carry on.
Well, it's just very much in the moment. I think if you're running away from stuff to go and do something, then that means that you're not thinking forward, because forward was much too complicated. So you just hang on in there and get on with it and enjoy it. Sometimes not enjoy it, but most of the times. And we had one woman who came in who was this fantastic. Funny enough, Anna reminds me of her a bit. She was, as opposed to Miss Ireland, who was terribly nice and proper. And then we had this woman called Margaret Mayer who arrived, and she was just like a storm. She was all jet black hair and let's create this and let's do that. And she liked me because I was getting good at it, I suppose. And so she pushed me creatively. She was amazing. She was a brilliant choreographer.
And do you think there's something in the running away from something that pushes people, not just you, but people as a general, into obsessing in a craft and into attaining, to not be too lofty about it, brilliance within that craft, because of the focus of, the utter sheer focus of, I don't want to look at anything else. This is respite. This is peace here. So I'll just stay here.
Yeah, absolutely. No, 100%. And I only ever really got sort of glimpses of my mother's ambition because I was entered it. I did a lot of competitions. Worthing had a music festival every year, and that music festival also involved a dance festival. So every year there I was from 5 years old onwards, performing in this class, this classification, this classification. This classification. And my memory, and you have to understand this is a long time ago, but I do remember my mother scraping my hair back, and pinning it, into place, and I was wearing false eyelashes by the time I was 8.
So would this be akin to?
Hang on a sec. What sort of? I don't get competitions like Celebrity Come Dancing or something?
No, this was a music festival. It was a festival that along the south coast, and so all the kids from all the schools in the area would be entered into this competition, and we would all compete because that's the name of the game in dance. It's all about competition. And there would be classifications: national dance, Greek and natural movement, classical ballet, tap, Melvin, and I can't remember the others, but yeah, modern dance, which then evolved into jazz later. But at that point, it was modern dance. So it was all quite staid. And
so what age were you then?
8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Every year.
Did you resent your mother for pushing you so hard? I mean, I don't want this to turn into a therapy session, but
a therapy session, shall we?
Yeah.
She, yes and no. I mean, I loved doing it. I didn't particularly like performing, so I would be at the back of the stage shaking before I went on for any performance. And I remember the change was that when you were doing the heats or whatever, and then if you won, which I tended to win, then you suddenly, now you were in the spotlight and you couldn't see your audience anymore, and it was proper theatre. It was, a different thing entirely. And I didn't like that. I really didn't like it. It's interesting, isn't it? Because you would think, oh, well, now you can perform and it's going to be, I just didn't. It was that one step too far. It was that one step when you're removed from an audience and suddenly it's just you in the spotlight doing what you do and there's no connection with anybody else. And it was, yeah. So, yeah, I was aware of my mother pushing me, and sometimes I resented it, and sometimes I went along with it. I was a kid, sometimes you're quite happy to do it, and sometimes it's like, oh, screw you, I really not, and we used to have huge fights, and yeah.
So I've got in my notes here that at the age of 12, you was in a panto, Cinderella, at the Worthing Pier.
That's
You
right.
say you didn't enjoy performing, but did you enjoy the experience of working with a team of people and doing panto?
Yeah, no, Panto was fun, and we had a dame who had, and I'm really sorry, I have tried to remember, but I can't remember his name, but was what he was one of those characters that had spent his whole life doing that. That's what he did. And he was absolutely meticulous about it. And his costume changes and all of that were just extraordinary. Yeah, really.
Would you call him a drag act? Would that be like the modern lexicon for it? No.
Don't think so. No, he was a dame.
What's the difference between a dame and a drag act then?
He was part of a cast of characters, and that was his character. And so it wasn't just putting on clothes. Well, yeah, no, a drag artist will inhabit a character for sure, but it's okay. It's more of a tradition. That's the word I'm looking for. It's more of a tradition than an act. How about
A bit
that?
like Commedia.
Yeah.
The characters of Commedia that go back to the
Men who dress as women in that situation. It's not a glamorous role, right? It's a comedy role. So so even drag artists who do comedy tend to be glamorous, but this guy was not glamorous, but had a huge presence on the stage, enormous, she.
And how did it come about?
We had, sorry?
How did it come about? How did you get the work?
I think I auditioned. I honestly don't remember. I'm pretty sure I auditioned, and I had pictures. I can't find them again, so I really apologize. But I have somewhere in my house. I have pictures of me, and I was skinny, and there's a picture of the 5 of us, I think, who were in the local newspaper. And I'm like this with my shoulders up around my ears and really, really skinny and really, really scared and really don't want to be there for the picture at all. But we did have Shetland ponies, real live crapping Shetland ponies. Yeah. And they were sort of trussed with bags, but the smell on stage was just unbelievable. So we trucked him with the Shetland ponies. And that was the first paid job I ever had in theatre.
So how old were you?
12.
You talked about the lights in the competition. The lights would go up, you wouldn't see anybody, and you'd be there on your own. Did working in an ensemble cast and the people there and the assumable support they gave you, Andre Vincent at the comments at the moment has told me to behave talk about drag acts and talking about being the dame on Worthing Pier.
Yeah, well done, Andre. Fantastic.
That was the Damon Worthing Pier 2 years ago. He was written.
Yeah.
Hi, Andre. So did being on an ensemble cast and being with, I assume, the kind, lovely, supportive people there, did it make it easier for you? Was it a much more pleasant experience?
I honestly and truthfully cannot remember. I can vaguely remember bringing the horses on. That's about my total memory of, and the dame, whose name has gone.
I thought you said to me they were if I remember rightly, an eccentric family.
No, that's later. That was
okay.
when I went on to do summer season and pantomime when I was actually trying to earn money. Yeah.
So did you feel positive after that? Did you feel more?
I think I was terrified out of my wits, to be honest with you. And just we did it and we got more confident at doing it. I honestly don't remember much about it. All I remember is eating Wimpies, which you will not remember because you were too young, Matt.
I've had a Wimpy.
Wimpies in the little cafe just opposite the pier, and that's where we used to go and hang out afterwards. Yeah.
So what happened after this then? You had this, relatively positive experience despite the fact that you were scared. what happens after doing the panto at 12?
I went to theatre school in London, and I was 13. Everyone felt was more glamorous than me. Everyone had more character than me. They all definitely knew a lot more about life in general than me. I mean, it's awful, isn't it? One of my memories of theatre school was going to see Pink Floyd at the Albert Hall, but that's got nothing to do with theatre school, I'm sure. But we did go and see Pink Floyd at the Albert Hall, me and one of the more eccentric women that was at school, and I learned to put on a mask. I learned very quickly at theatre school that you had to have a bit of face, you know. So that's what I did. I became
was it arts educational?
yeah, in London, yeah, Hyde Park.
And so you developed a outward facing character to the world.
Yeah, and it
Was that something you were aware of when you were doing it? You thought, Christ, I have to do this.
No, I can look back on it now and say that's what I did. And I mean, it was fun. We did a lot of theatre school is like vocational in the afternoons, educational in the mornings. So you cut down on your education. So you only do 4 subjects, and then vocational is, in my case, lots of classical ballet, and we did a bit of drama, and it was, apart from that, I felt completely at sea and out of my depth. Once I sort of got the hang of, oh, I'm all right, actually, I'm in the top class, and I'm, seem to be quite good at this. And so I got mouthy. I found a way to find a bit of chat, and it was, got in with all the wrong people, as you do, because that's when you're out of your own comfort zone. You tend to go for the bad people and that sort of stuff. And I did very, very well. I passed major exams, and I was all set to go into what would have then been the festival ballet. I was due to go and do company classes at 16, and I had by then made, like, I had a little, we were a bit, not a gang, we weren't a gang, but it was 5 or 6, 4 or 5 of us that got on really well. And we'd spent the whole of a full day, working for the school show, which was our end of year school show. And this particular year was a Scottish theme. So we marched up and down singing "Keep Right On to the End of the Road" endlessly. And I did a sword dance, and over and over and over again. And the lines weren't straight enough, and we weren't doing it, and so on and so forth. So it really was a whole day. And we finally sort of got out of there, and 4 of us went, oh, come on, let's go and have fun. So we went to Piccadilly to score some blow and meet some boys. And then we went home with the young men, I suppose now. And we drank a lot and we smoked a lot. And then everyone went home except me, because I was too scared. I'm not going into what was going on at home, but I was actually genuinely too scared to go home, or what would happen. So I went by my...
Because you were obviously drunk and high.
Drunk and high. That wasn't the issue. It was the fact I'd missed my train. And yeah. So did I call? No. Did I get in contact with anyone? No. And so the police came and found me, I think about a week later. And that was the end of my time at theatre school, because they expelled me.
Were you sleeping rough for a week?
No. No, I was sleeping with a rather tasty young man.
Ah,
And so what happened after that then? You got expelled and your life seemed to have completely changed direction. I mean, what did you think? What were you
Well,
thinking?
it suited. My father was very happy about it. He said, "Right now, you go and get a job as secretary and do what you should have done all along." Because in all the years I did all those wretched competitions, my father never, ever came and saw me dance. Never, not once. And he was of the opinion that this was a waste of time and a waste of money and a waste of a life. So I went to the local college and I learnt to touch type and I read Lord of the Rings through commerce, and I found another boyfriend. I ended up pregnant. I had my son at 17 years old. I'm not going to go into this. This is just what happened. And the school accepted me back when I was 18 years old. So I went back to school.
arts educational.
Arts educational, yeah. And I had to keep the fact that I'd had a baby a secret. So I wasn't allowed to tell anybody that this has happened. And I just couldn't hack it. You know, I think we had this discussion, Matt, about an athlete. If you interrupt a top athlete's training, I was 16 years old when I left. I was really at the top of I would think probably the top of my own skill at the time. I went back a year later. I'd had time out. I'd had a baby. Lots of things had changed. My focus had completely gone. And I didn't have that tunnel vision that you must have for that sort of career. So I ran away. And I ran into London because in London you can be completely anonymous. So I ran into London. That's what I did.
And did you have any plan for the future at that time, or were you not looking back and not looking forward?
No, it was all about that. Most of my life was always about now, this moment, what I'm doing now.
And so what happened when you ran into London town?
Lots of bad things. And yeah, lots of bad things. Leave it there. And made beds in hotels for a while. I worked in a sauna, not doing anything in the sauna, I have to say. I was the receptionist in the sauna, thank you. I did a bit of dancing in pubs. I got drunk a lot. And then eventually I phoned my family and I went home. We talked it through in the way my family doesn't talk things through. And I decided I needed to earn a living. So the next stage was summer season, was it? Pantomime. First of all, pantomime in Portsmouth. I think it was the King's Theatre. Maybe Andre will know. And that's where I met this family. I can't remember what panto was. I genuinely can't remember. I'm pretty sure it wasn't Cinderella because that would ring a bell with me. But I just can't remember. Anyway, I met this family and I met them there. And then
is this 1974?
I don't know.
That's okay. It's not a big problem. Please carry on.
So there are families that work because again, you have to. This is like we have to go back. So this is historical stuff, if you like. As a dancer, choices of careers were cabaret, which at that time was bikinis, tassels, old style cabaret. Contemporary dance was beginning, but there wasn't much work to be had, and I wasn't a contemporary dancer. Or pantomime in summer season. So I went for pantomime in summer season. And I got my summer season. We stood up and sang, "This is my once a year day, every day for months."
What is summer season? So pantomime is winter, right? Pantomime's from
Pantomime is winter.
October to January.
Yeah,
What's
I
summer season?
don't even know if it exists. In fact, I'm pretty sure it doesn't exist anymore. But it used to be you had two big seasons: the panto season and the summer season, and you would. It was for tourists and old age pensioners, and I don't remember seeing many young people in the audience, to be honest with you.
And what's the venue for that? Is it in the same
It's in
theatres where you'd see
theatre.
panto?
Yeah, same sort of venues, theatres, all theatres. And there was this family, and the husband and wife, mother, two daughters. Husband would do King Rat in the pantos. Wife would do Fairy, Good Fairy in the pantos. Grandmother would do Witch or Back End of the Duck. And daughters were young enough and able enough that they would do the dancing. So that was the family, and they were extraordinary. Mona, the grandmother, was unbelievable. She was, maybe I got the idea of red hair from her, I don't know, but she had bright scarlet hair. She was probably my age now. And she used to use the laundrette to wash her stuff out. And I remember her, can't remember if I went in and met her in there or she told me the story afterwards, but she was basically washing a whole bunch of basically red clothing, most of which was running red dye. So there's Mona dressed in red, washing in, and she suddenly went, "Oh no, that shouldn't be in there." And so she yanked the door of the washing machine open, and out poured this red dye, which looked remarkably like blood, out into the laundrette. And some poor innocent woman walked in the middle of this, screamed, nearly fainted, ran away. And I remember Mona telling me this story and laughed, just laughing. She was just so funny. She was so proud of being the back end of the goose.
And did this family put on the pantos? Were they a production
No,
company and they'd get people in to do the rest?
Pantos were run by a company, but this family would be employed in various different shows around.
So what were you doing in the panto?
I was the chorus.
I'm a fool. Can you explain what the chorus is?
I was the one who was the female chorus line. We were all women, no men involved. And we came out for the songs that interspersed every scene. There would be a scene, there would be a song, we would be dancing, music would be playing, we would be, I can't believe it, I was singing. I had never been able to sing, never been able to sing, but there you go, there I was.
And was that because you were part of a group?
Yeah, we were all auditioned, we all got the job. And I remember on one particular night, and there was a whole bunch of, as always, bad people around who I got involved with. And I remember taking a tab of acid one night and climbing what I thought was a mountain, which probably a few rocks, outside of Ilfracombe, and then doing what you do and finding my truth, and then coming back down the mountain again and going into work the following day thinking, "Oh, this will be fine." And the lights went up, and so did I.
So it sounds like you were having fun. Were you positive about your life and your position working in the theatre at this time?
I was, sort of. It, and then it got complicated, and then I'd like to cut, and move on.
So what happened after this? After we cut from working the theatre and doing the pantos, what did you choose to do next?
I was originally used to go to the dance centre just to keep up class.
Where's the dance centre?
Dance centre was in Floral Street in Covent Garden, and then the Pineapple Centre then largely took over from where I'm hazy memory on exactly how that all happened, but the Pineapple Centre became the replacement to the dance centre, and I used to go and do at least 2 classes a day every day, and then I did some teaching, and then I joined a company. I met the most amazing West Indian.
Just before we go on, sorry to interrupt you. Why are we doing 2 classes a day in dance? I know it might seem quite obvious, but I think it's an interesting question to ask.
No, that's what you do as a dancer.
So it's to keep your skills, to keep yourself
keep fit, to keep
honed
up. I'm getting there, Andre. I'll get there in a while. Yeah, it's what you did. I mean, it was what my training was. It's just what you did. You did at least 1 class a day, if not 2, every day.
And how did it come about you begin teaching there? Were you competent in all the stuff you were doing? You were just doing there to keep your skills high, and someone said, "Why don't you fill in for me?" Or
I'm not 100% on my memory, but I probably booked a studio and started it off, and people started coming, and I knew people, and people knew that I was good at what I did, and it just.
You were saying you got together with a company.
West
Indian.
I met. How are we doing for time here?
Fine.
We're at 40 minutes. We've got loads of time.
Oh, not my comfort zone. This. So, I met an amazing West Indian guy called Raymond McLean at the dance centre, and he taught me African jazz, which was, for me, was quite a thing, because it meant getting down to the ground. And as the sort of dancer I was all up here. I was all quite airy. And he was glorious. He was just glorious. He was just one of those people that you fall in love with. I don't mean literally, you just this character. And he had a friend who was called Elroy, and Elroy had a company, and Elroy saw me dancing and asked me to join the company. And so I became, I think, the only white dancer in a black company. And that was really interesting. That was really interesting. I'm not saying I encountered prejudice, because I didn't. I was an outsider. I was white. End of story, And but we did some very nice productions, and really nice productions. And my background of my life was going to pop, but that again is another point in my life, I suppose, where dancing was was holding me together, and the rest of my life was a bit of a mess. I think, and again, I've got no idea of order with this, but I've got some of this written down. I met up with Frankie Anderson and Toby Philpott, who I believe you've interviewed.
Yeah, we interviewed Toby a few weeks ago. Yeah, a few months ago, in fact.
And we, again, it's all a bit hazy. You have to remember, life was about doing stuff to get out of your head, really, at the time. But we worked quite hard. I think I learned to juggle. That is such an admission. I think I did learn to juggle. I definitely learned to fire eat in somebody's back garden over a pint of Guinness one day. But what we did get was we got funding from the Arts Council to get some extra training. We were a 3-person company, as I remember at the time. And so we then met someone else who I'm sure you've know of or have heard of or even have met, and that was Barry Grantham.
The name
And
mentioned commonly in the interviews.
He's doing a festival in another week, a few weeks.
is he?
Yeah, on Commedia dell'arte. They're doing some shows and talks.
Brilliant. He's brilliant. I mean, he was a lot younger, obviously, when I met him, but him and Joan playing piano and Barry teaching. And I learned about masks, and I learned about all sorts of stuff. And we also had, I voted for Let's Learn to Tap Dance. So we worked with a guy at the Pineapple called Derek, can't remember. And I learned jazz tap, and that was a complete eye opener for me. It was wonderful.
And this is you as a trio? So you got funding to develop your work together as a trio, and then you went and studied with all these people, right?
Yeah, and it was to expand our skills, and it was wonderful. It really was wonderful.
Just quickly add for Barry. Barry taught loads of us, and we learned eccentric dance. He was one of the few people who could teach eccentric dance, which went way back, and commedia. So it was the two things.
And I got hooked on the commedia. That's what got me. I got completely hooked on masks and Italian theatre and Yeah. And around about the same time, I met Chrissy. We finally got there. It's taken a while. And I think for sure I must have met Chrissy at the Pineapple. And as I said before, earning as a dancer was not the easiest thing in the world. So we put together 20 minutes, I suppose, of a combination of mime and dance. And I've got here question mark, did we eat fire at the end? And she's going to have to come back and remind me if we did or didn't. I have a feeling we did for Covent Garden, because we thought we needed something for Covent Garden.
Big spectacle.
A bit bigger, yeah. But we started at Camden Town before Camden Town became restauranted up to your ears. And there was a little square, and we worked with Randolph, not with. Oh, we did. Thank you, Andre. Just thank you. And we worked with a guy. Well, we didn't work with. We shared the pitch with a guy called Randolph the Remarkable, who I think you've got a full description in Chrissy's interview about what he did.
Very much so.
But basically, he stuck a washing bowl onto his stomach, and that was his act. That was it. But surrounded by this huge personality and gags and one-liner, he was amazing. We were like, he's fantastic. This is what street entertainment. This is it. Yeah. And we did our mime. We had music. We didn't bother trying to gather a crowd. We just put the music on and started and let music play for a little bit, and then in we went. And that's how we worked, and it worked fine.
It was successful then?
Yeah, certainly in Camden, it was very successful.
Did you collect at the end, or just have a bowl out?
We had something out. We had a thing out in Camden, but in Covent Garden, we had to send somebody around.
Now, just before we go on to Covent Garden too much, I have down here that Maggie Pinhorn invited you to a protest performance. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, no, that's going back a few years. That was when
78.
Yeah, Frankie and Toby and me, and we demonstrated on the right, what was it called? Obstruction of the highway. And there was a whole business going on about whether the cobbles were public right of way. What was the portico? Was that public right of way? What belonged to Covent Garden? What didn't belong to Covent Garden? And it was finally established, I think, and don't quote me on this because if this is going through legal stuff, then I'm not your person to think. But I think it was like 20 yards outside of Covent Garden building belonged to Covent Garden. The rest of the cobbles was public right of way. So the street entertainers had absolute perfect right to work there. And then the portico belonged to the church, and they gave the performers permission to sign up there, have stuff stashed there. Yeah.
And so how did you come into this then? What was going on with this protest?
It was that Covent Garden was not that keen on entertainment outside. And so they were trying to say that this was owned, the whole space was owned by Covent Garden and we had no right.
That must have been the GLC.
It would have been the GLC, yeah, because they owned it at the time.
And so did Maggie Pinhorn organise one day where everyone met and joined together?
Performance protest. I mean, I have a picture which I can't find of me.
Can you just? Yeah, please carry on. Sorry.
Top hat, the same twinkly top frock coat that you had when you opened, and we did something. Something sort of mimey sort of stuff.
And what was the day like as a whole? Was there lots of people there? Was it a good vibe? Was it party vibe? What was going on in the day?
Yeah, you're talking about 70 something.
That probably was quite a lot of people, because that's the period when they were fighting to save Covent Garden.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what we haven't had many interviews about.
I would think
1980.
I've got a feeling Tim Batt was involved with that. That's the only name I can actually conjure up in my head. I think Toby probably did some juggling. He was a pretty good juggler at the time. Frankie and I did our mimey thing.
And so let's draw it back onto this and that, you and Chrissy Illing. So in 1978 in Camden, you formed this and that. You developed the show in Camden.
Yeah.
You're putting music on, you're doing the dance pieces, the mime pieces, the play pieces with the hat out, sat there through the show.
Yeah.
That's working for you. So do you spend a couple of years doing it there?
Can't remember. Bit of time, maybe a year. And then I think what was happening was that the space kept getting closed down because there was an event happening or there was something happening and we couldn't work. And we were getting a bit starving hungry. And so we pondered Covent Garden for quite a long time. It's like, huge space. Do we really want to do this? Our show was small. And I think we both went and checked out Covent Garden and went, oof, too big.
Did it have that sense of prestige that it kind of has now, where you feel like you have to have a working piece of performance to take it to there? Because there's so many people with working shows there.
There were already people with working shows there then. So.
And did you feel like you needed something that worked to go there? Otherwise, it would be embarrassing maybe to take something that wouldn't function in the space. Or was it just the mechanics of the space itself you were thinking about?
It was mostly that it was big. It was the size. And I guess, neither of us really considered the fact that actually it would work fine, because we weren't trying to talk. We weren't actually trying to engage a crowd at that point verbally, which I doubt I could have done. But, I don't know about Chrissy, but I certainly couldn't have managed it. But it was so visual what we were doing that in the end, it actually worked quite well.
What was the first day like when you went there?
I honestly don't remember. Probably scared shitless, in a word. And we just went out and did it. And Chrissy was Chrissy's always been a fabulous comedian. So I think Chrissy's smile sort of took Covent Garden by storm. And also it was very choreographed. It was very clean. It was very tight. You know, it was not a loose show. There was very little room for any improvisation in there, and for that reason, it worked very well because it was, you know, quite clear, beginning, middle, end.
And it makes complete sense from the craft you've developed through your life that you're going to create a choreographed piece because you spent all your life thinking about the hand being here, here, or here. The same thing's going to go into the show, right?
Yeah. And Chrissy was equally as trained as I was, so you know, we pulled skills to make.
How do you develop the work? Did you go to a studio and prepare
Yeah,
and treat
we
it?
had the pineapple, thank you very much. So we'd go and grab a free studio in there and work it through. And I'm pretty sure she put the music together. We put the music together, and I have a thing that we did something in. Again, Andre, you might be able to help. That we may have done something in sailors' suits, but that's a very vague memory. Anyways, by the by, we did a very soft mime piece to Ginopody, and then we did a tap piece to Fat Swallow, Your Feet's Too Big, and then I think we may have done a sailor thing. And then we finished off with Fire, apparently, although I'm not 100% sure of that.
And it worked. In Covent Garden, it worked. You got crowds, it kicked.
We got crowds. We didn't get huge crowds. We weren't like what we would have called the real big earners, but we earned, yeah. We earned.
And what was the general vibe of Covent Garden at that time? You're talking about 79, 80, the real beginning of Covent Garden to be what it would be nowadays.
It was cool. It was some people were friendly, some people weren't friendly. I mean, it's just the way it is in Covent Garden. But and because we were a unit, that helped a lot because there was two of us. So it wasn't like, you know, one person sort of bursting onto the scene and trying to make friends, whatever. We were very much a unit. We'd go off, we'd count our money, you know, we'd head off, do a class, whatever.
You supported each other.
Yeah, it was a very, very good period. Actually, I can remember really enjoying it. And again, I will go back to Tim Batt was around at that time, and Chris Adams was
The Mendeeses.
Hello, Susie, and Chris No, he wasn't working. No, they weren't working together, or were they? I don't know. I mean, jugglers. Sorry. Lots of jugglers around. It was pretty. I think it was really creative. I think there were a lot of really, really highly creative people working there around about that time. And latterly, if you hung around till the evening, and again, it wasn't necessarily part of my thing at the time, but there would maybe be a big band would turn up and play on Covent Garden, and then John Hegley would stand up and do some poetry, and then the band would play again. So they gave him the, you know, what's the word? Help me out here.
Space.
Yeah, they made that space for him basically with
Yeah.
music, and then there'd be silence, and then he'd do the poetry, and that worked so well. Because suddenly a single voice, and then back to the band, you know.
And was this sense with the public that this was a vibrant, creative space to come and hang out and see culture?
I think so. I don't know that they came to see culture. They came to shop mostly, or eat. But then they found a bit of culture in front of them, and there was some, you know, Tim Batt was an extraordinary juggler. I mean, you know, it was a period there where there was some really talented people. Chris Lynham, good Lord. Hello, Chris. Oh, Charlie Lynham, sorry.
So, hey Charlie. So, how long did you work in Covent Garden as your staple then? Did that become
That
your
was
kind of
that
9 to
was
5?
yeah, that's how we earned our living. And no, I can't remember, but I think we did the inside pitch as well. And I think that, of course, for us was ideal because let me tell you, tap dancing on cobblestones is not perfect in anybody's world, you know. But tap dancing on nice flat concrete works extremely well. And
And
of course, the music echoes and all of that.
yeah, and it's got this, the inside pitch has this sense of like a staged area.
Yeah,
It's got the seating and everything else to it.
yeah.
So how long did you spend doing that? Was that the next 5, 10,
No,
15 years in Covent
nothing.
Garden? No?
I think it was about 2 years that we on and off between Camden and Covent Garden, and then Chrissy uh, decided or was offered a place in Paris studying mime, and I um, was miffed, and because it's my partner and she's leaving. And so I had met somewhere along the line, we both met a chap called Mark Rowan, who was a very flamboyant, uh, first man I ever saw. And this is London. So, you know, it was the first man I saw openly walking down the road holding hands with another man and with absolutely with a real sense of pride. And that was Mark. And he had long blonde hair, and we're coming into punk by then, or coming into the middle of punk by then. So Chrissy went to Paris. I started rehearsing with Mark, and in the meantime I did our show on my own, and
How did
apparently
that feel?
weird, very, very weird. And then apparently, and I didn't know this, Chrissy was doing our show on her own in Paris simultaneously. So there's two of us, like, your feet's too big, either side of the English Channel. And yeah, yeah, it's good days. They were really good days, you know, when I look back on it. And then then Mark and I put together 15 minutes of, that's how I'm still earning my bread and butter on the streets.
And you're not looking for work in venues at this time? You're not thinking about going back and doing the pantos, the summer season?
No, I think I got caught up in the whole idea of I'm a free living spirit.
It's quite hard once you've been on the street to go back into
Yeah,
organized process where someone
yeah,
can tell you no and yes, and
yeah, yeah,
you have to do what people say, whereas on the street you can make what you want, and
yeah,
that's intoxicating.
yeah.
But
So
you go on to create a really tight show with this new person.
Mark, yeah, it was an extraordinary. I have to say, of things I've done, I was really proud of this and that, and I was really proud of what was rather statedly now, but at the time it worked. We were called Wizards with 2 Z's, and it was a combination of mask, makeup, costume, and we went completely overboard. So we had, I'm not going to go into this too deeply, but we used Mark had incredible fire skills. He had like seriously top circus standard fire skills. And I mean, I'd been, you know, tying rags around, but anyway, I learned better with Mark. And so we used mask, and we started off very, very, just briefly. We started very costumed, with Mark in control of me. And then that costume slowly came off, and we ended
when you
up,
say in control of you, like you're a kind of like a doll or a mannequin?
yeah, like a puppeteer. Yeah, yeah, very
Okay.
much like that. And then we came from full masks to half reflective masks. And by that stage, the fire was on, and Mark was still very much in lots of fire, very much in control. Dance, and fire wheels, and then the gosh, sorry.
It's okay.
To explain, then the power started to shift from Mark to me, and then it turned.
So he's got all the focus, right? He's performing and taking with all his fire and stuff, and you're in the background, and then you start moving to the foreground, and he starts receding back, right?
We start battling. It turned into like a gladiator battle, and by this stage we're in ripped leather. Our faces are kabuki style makeup under the mask. And at the time, my hair was bright scarlet, and Mark had a Mohican that went down there somewhere, and we battled it out. And in the end, I killed him by ramming a fire torch into his mouth and walked off with my fist in the air. It was a cute show. And the first people we worked for with this very, very punky show was the British Army.
So you didn't do it in Covent Garden. This wasn't a street show.
No, this was a cabaret show.
Okay, and how did you end up working for the British Army then?
Well, Mark had an agent for his previous fire act, which was girl with large breasts meets boy next door, and they eat fire together. That was it. And I said, well, this isn't going to work because I don't have the prerequisite flesh for a start off, and I really don't want to do that shit. And so we put together the soundtrack. Mark really put together an extraordinary soundtrack. It was it was a band.
Was it punk?
It started off with White Noise, which was a 60s thing, which was really strange. And then all I can remember of it was that the upbeat section, which was the point where we started to go at it, was the drummer from The Clash. It was an extended track from him. Yeah, so it had real guts to it. It was amazing.
And so once again, this is a highly choreographed piece. There's no improv. You're not playing. You're doing. You're hitting your mark, so to say.
If you didn't hit your mark, you got burned.
Yeah. And so what was the show for the army like?
Well, they really weren't quite sure what hit them because they thought they were getting Blazing Affair. And what they got was us. And I got burnt that day as well. That was just horrid. I was so nervous, and Mark used to do a like this with a firebrand, which would be round my hair, and my hair was lacquered and gelled and sticking out, and it went on fire that one.
And was it a serious burn?
No, it was just half my head of hair, but apart from that, it was fine.
It was aesthetic.
It was put it out and spike it up again afterwards. Yes, Melvin?
You toured this, what was a tight cabaret show all over the place, didn't you?
Yeah.
Let's get the highs of all this.
Oh, yeah, no. We did really amazingly well with it. And we spent a long time in Dubai when Dubai was not what it is now. And we worked in Egypt. Arab countries were perfect for us because it was costume and makeup and ceremony and fire, so it was a real perfect mix for a Middle Eastern audience particularly. But we spent a few months touring for the British Army, which was odd. And our second job, this is the low, Melvin, not the high, the low. Our second job Mark was still on contract with this agent, and he informed us that we were going to go and work at Pontins. I went, "You serious?" And we had also been offered to support the police, the band, the police.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And we had that as an offer, and this guy would not let us go. He wouldn't let us out of the contract. So we ended up in the Isle of Wight, working in Pontins, where they said things like, "So, how do you want your lights? On or off?" And we were really dependent on half decent lighting, and we weren't dependent. We could make it work, but on carpet in someone's bloody front room, be serious. This is, and we walked in, and this the people that worked there said, they looked at the restaurant and they said, "See all these people? This is Christmas, right? See all these people?" And we went, "Yeah." They said, "These are the people whose families don't want them." So we sort of made it work, I think. It was
How did you feel about the job at that time? Were you thinking, get through this, or was this this is where I found myself? Was there a sense of dread, or?
Do you know what? I really did live in the now, honestly. It was very much like, "Oh, what are we doing here? Oh, right, good. So you're going to hold the microphone next to the tape recorder, are you? Oh, that's lovely. This will be very beautiful." And you got to remember, we'd done the Hippodrome prior. We'd come out of the floor with lasers and God knows what else. And now this guy's going, "So, mic next to the cassette player? Yeah, okay. All right, that'll be fine."
And did you just see it as a challenge? You didn't take it as a hit of your pride?
No. I mean, we did have a few old ladies go, because it was quite a shocking show. But no, it was completely cool. And Mark was mercurial. That's the word I'd use. Mercurial character to work with. So yeah. And we discovered that Pontins at Christmas, why people work there, is because everyone is leaping in and out of everybody else's beds. So that's why the staff are there. They're all having a phenomenal time, apart from the actual work, which they sort of got through and then went back to doing what they were doing. So we joined in.
Fair, sounds like a lot of fun. Did you think about going back to Pontins after it, or were you happy to leave it behind?
No, it was lovely. Thank you very much. Time to go.
And so what did you guys do after that then?
We did also, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff were going on at the same time, you've got to understand, because we get contracts, but it wasn't all the time. So I'll just consult my notes for a moment here. So we got shipped off to Hong Kong. We did 3 nights in Hong Kong, for example, and St. Moritz and Germany and Dubai. Went on and on and on and on and on. They didn't want us to leave. But meantime, I was also teaching workshops and at different points working in different theatre schools, teaching, working commedia dell'arte, working with students, directing stuff and putting stuff together. So Covent Garden at this point was gone as far as I was concerned, and I was earning a living and some.
Was there a feeling of you've moved past the street, so to speak?
Well, I don't know. I just, again, I never saw. Did I think I was above it? No, I don't think so at all, actually. Anyway, sometime in all this, I got some film work. I think that came from Toby Philpott, who phoned me up and said, some work on this. So I worked as a puppeteer on Little Shop of Horrors.
Little Shop of Horrors that everybody worked on.
Everyone.
Patricia Martinelli worked on that.
Yeah,
we
worked on that. Your wife, yeah.
We were all down in this, like in the galley with these levers operating the vines. That was
And
it.
so, what's the name of the plant in that film? I can't remember, but there's a huge plant, isn't there, with
Oh yeah,
hundreds of vines going on, and I think they hide
Phoebe.
every physical performer.
Yeah.
What was it like to work on it?
It was fabulous. It was like working with a whole team of people, and it was the first time I'd done film, and it was understanding that this is everybody at the top of their game. You know, it really was everybody. You know, the guys working on the floor, whatever, they're there because they're good at what they do. I mean, I was not a puppeteer, I have to point you out, but I did have coordination, and I could sort of work it out. And so yeah, I did that, and then I went on and did.
So, just so I go, you were hired for your physical literacy, right? You were hired because you understood your body,
And
how to move it.
I think anyone who's trained in dance to that, the length of time, I think you've got an understanding of coordination. You've got an understanding of spatial awareness. Someone says, "Oh, well, can you do this, that, and the other?" And give it a couple of goes, and you probably can, because you have that. Yeah, I think it's. I wouldn't want to go back and do it again, but it was a pretty amazing training. Yeah.
Did you have a yearning at that time after doing Little Shop of Horrors of thinking, right, film, this is what I want to work in? And yeah,
Absolutely. And I went on and did Who Killed Roger Rabbit.
one of my favorite films as a child.
That was
Wonderful piece of
brilliant,
cinema.
brilliant to work. And that was something. And then I got an offer to go off to Canada and be inside this puppet on a film you'll never have heard of, because I do believe if it did come out, it just bombed, or maybe it never came out. And I got injured on it. I got injured quite badly, and it's sort of not worth going into really. But it was.
Were you hospitalised?
No, but I wasn't. My arm was sort of doing stuff on its own because I yanked a whole massive tendon down here. So yeah. So
And how long were you injured for?
Injured enough to have to leave the film.
And was that for a long time? Did you spend 6 months out, or?
No, chiropractor, Canada, chiropractor. So we went.
And just out of interest, just not getting too much detail of the film, but did you?
I've missed Andre. I've got to go back.
We can go back. There's no problem. But when you got injured on the film, did you get compensation? Were you looked after? Just,
you know what? I was so stupid and young and drunk and didn't care about myself. Really didn't care about myself. So it was all about, in my case, vengeance would have been good. And then, as that wasn't likely to happen, I left in high dudgeon. And yes, I should have got compensation. Of course, I should have done. But we won't go into names, and we won't go into who made
of course,
and all of that.
yeah.
It was.
But you just moved on.
Andre Vincent mentioned something about the ballet Petrushka.
Thank you. That's the bit I missed. Somewhere
I believe. Was this after or before the film?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I've missed it.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back. Maggie Pinhorn. It was the only time that I really went and asked, because someone said, "Look, I wanted to do a piece."
Could you explain who Maggie Pinthorn is, just very quickly before we go on, for people who might not know?
Maggie ran Alternative Arts, which basically ran the events in Covent Garden. There were yearly events that happened through the year, and I can't remember. Did we have to sign in with Maggie? No, I honestly can't remember. Maybe she ran the list at that stage. I'm afraid there's a lot of hazy details in this.
So she was managing the creative cultural output from Covent Garden Market, right? And she
Yes,
worked with the people
and
busking there
she
when
had done
people weren't
from the
busking.
time of the demo onwards.
Yeah. And so you went up to her and asked for work because she used to divvy work out to people.
No, no,
correct?
I didn't ask her for work. I
Okay.
wanted to produce a piece of street dance, street theatre, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And because I'd done so much work on the street by then, I really had this urge to do something bigger. So Andre, here you go. So we put together, and the ballet that I loved the best at that point in time, I would change my mind now, but was Petrushka. So Maggie also placed performers in other work, yeah, etc. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, I wasn't looking for work. I was looking for help to find funding to put together a production. So Maggie gave me a few contacts, and off I went. And I was working, oh, I've remembered her name, with a woman called Deborah, who was American, and she was a dancer, and I was this sort of mushy, skilled person. And we put together this production of Petrushka.
And what was the concept of the production? What were you trying to achieve when you began it?
A multi-skilled, colourful, dance based, but using what I'd learned of work from working the street with enough hooks in it to pull an audience in. So there was some dialogue, there was a lot of dance, there was a bit of, oh gosh, this is embarrassing. Do I really have to say this? Hoop juggling. Okay, that's gone now. And we and a bit of mime.
And
And
was there this will to take the sort of indoor craft and the outdoor craft and mesh it
try and
together?
put the whole thing together to make something that would work as a dance production, dance theatre production on the street. I was really captivated by that idea.
Was there
So
a lot of people in the production?
we had 12 thereabouts, maybe 15.
And who did you get funding from? Because if you have 12 people in a
We,
production, that's
Jesus,
a lot of.
no, we scrabbled. I mean, we hunted, we scraped, we sent begging letters to everybody that we knew or didn't know, you know. And what we eventually got was we got money for the music. We got money for the music composition, and we got. I honestly, again, I'm sorry, my memory does fail me, but I do remember we got money for the music. So whoever the composer was got paid, and we sort of got donations. I mean, that's how bad it was. We just sort of
Were the performers, were they doing it as a sort of, this might be something we'll develop forward in the future? They were working pro bono, so to speak, for want of
no,
a better term.
pro bono. They were getting paid, but they weren't getting paid very much. But they were getting
And
paid. We
and that was from the funding.
yeah, that was, we were just determined that if nobody else got paid, they'd get paid.
And how much rehearsal did you put forward to produce it?
Well, again, all of that costs money. Rehearsal rooms, yeah, and the costumes were designed by someone. Oh, do you remember a slack rope walker called Bernie?
Tight wire, Bernie Bennett.
Bernie Bennett. He had a girlfriend, and she made costumes, and she did the costumes for the production. And as far as I know, we also paid her. So.
And so was it a couple of weeks of training, or was it a few months, or?
It was about a month, I think we did.
And was this again in the studio?
Yeah, Yeah, I have to. Yeah.
And did you train on the street at all, or did you work it indoors and then take it outdoors as a finished production?
I think we
'Cause
had.
I know,
I think we had
I
to
know a
do.
lot of street shows work it out as they're making it, don't they?
Yeah, but this wasn't. Again, a bit like Chrissy and I. It was a put together thing, and with the understanding of how to do something on the street. And we had one guy who was playing, let's call him the ringmaster, because that'll do, because that's not exactly right. And
Master of ceremonies.
yeah, that would do it. And I can't remember what happened, but it didn't work out. And so Andre came in and took that part. And he was extremely good at it. I have to say that, because Andre's on the message thing, so he was extremely good.
So where was the first venue for the show?
Covent Garden.
So you did it in the West Piazza?
We did it on the West Piazza, yeah.
And was it just a normal day?
That's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Because there seemed to be a creativity and a wealth of doing different things in Covent Garden back then, which you don't have now.
Andre played the charlatan, he says.
There you go.
And now
I'm very interested in this lack of creativity then and now and why that is. But first of all, I just want to know how did the first show go? Was it nervous? Was the growth pains? Was it when you did it the first day? Was it the same as when you did it the last day? Was it finished out of the box?
It worked extremely well.
And this is just a normal day. This is a normal day. Punters walking around.
But we had speakers and we had music. You know, it helps. We had mics.
And how did everyone feel? Was everyone very happy? I assume a lot of the cast probably hadn't done a street show before.
No, they hadn't, and they were really nervous. But as I remember it, it went well. It went really well, and we did it there. And I think we also did it before Andre joined it. We did it in Victoria Gardens. You know that stage there. We did it there as well. Yeah, we did it there for a run, I think, actually.
And then did you take it on tour? Did you take it to?
That's why I went, oh, I've forgotten something. Because then after the film, I went and sold it to, in Canada, in Vancouver, to what was then going to be Expo 86.
So just before we go on to Expo 86, let's touch on this point that Melvin brought up. Melvin, you were saying about creativity in Covent Garden.
Well, it seems to be there was a lot more things, people like 12 people doing a show. Nowadays, it's just solos or the odd double act, but it's become very much like, here we are, I'll come in, clock in, do my show, earn my money, and go home. Whereas what Patti's talking about is she's actually gone away and gone, I've got this idea, I want to do it, and it's this big idea with lots of people, and hey ho, she did it, got the money together, got the performers together, and create this big production. We don't seem to have that anymore. It's interesting.
And is that down to? Sorry, you carry on.
Well, I think there was a lot of people who it was to some degree. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, and I'm sure someone will chime in on the messages to tell me I'm totally talking bullshit. But there was an ideology to working the street. Yes, it certainly was about the money, but it was also about learning skills, developing skills, moving forward. And I don't know. I haven't been to Covent Garden. I haven't seen any street entertainment for years. So I have no idea whether that's still the case, or whether that is not the case. Sorry, which is what you both seem to be saying. But you know, Matt, you're performing out there. I mean, would you describe yourself as uncreative? Because I don't get that.
Well, I'd like to believe I am. I think there are people there who are, but I think instead of, because the thing I touched on before with you is about, I was trying to understand whether the public saw it as a place to go and see culture, because I think now it's like a theme park ride. People go in there to get the street performance experience, and they'll sit there for 40 minutes, watch the performance, and then go. And I think the performers treat it like that, where they go there, they start, and then they finish, and it's a street show. And a street show has certain ingredients. It ends with doing a trick, some kind of spectacle, or a melodrama, or any other sort of established tropes within the craft of street performance. They'll go through the numbers, finish the show, take their money, and go home. And I don't see people coming from performing arts schools. I don't see people coming from dance, coming from even circus schools, and going there and experimenting and playing and trying to bring something like what you did, where you're bringing something that's not necessarily just from the street. It's from stage and cabaret and dance, and you know, bringing that and trying to apply it onto the street. Even if you see people coming from circus school, they don't try and apply these prepared pieces of cabaret work to the street. They come to the street and instantly they have all the hack trope tricks, the jokes, the bag of material, which you, Melvin, Andre, people developed over decades, and we sort of got this huge, massive idea sphere of kind of stuff that works. They'll just pick and choose from that and then create a show which is, generally speaking, quite generic, that works very well because it's been honed over decades, but it's not creative, and it's not doing something different, and it's not doing something where someone would watch one show and then watch another show and feel like it's distinctly different and that they're getting a distinctly different experience, which I think is detrimental to the space and the craft as a whole. Yes, in my opinion.
The trouble is that the whole feeling of Covent Garden has changed so dramatically. I mean, I went by accident. One weekend I was at a Photo London down at Somerset House, and I thought, oh, I'll go and try and grab, and I forgot it was the weekend. I mean, it's a complete disaster. And I swear, I walked into Covent Garden and went, oh my God, what's happened? And it was just like queues and queues and queues and queues of people. And the ones that were sitting down were sort of like this next to each other because there's no room to actually move. And I thought, oh, that's hard work now. You know, that from that point of view, from the way it is now run. And what can I say? Is this the way the world's gone? I don't know. But I can remember people like, and Melvin's mentioned her, Patricia Martinelli. Unbelievable, you know, creative solo woman on the street doing seriously good clowning, you know, of a particular quality that, yeah, you couldn't see it anywhere else. You know, you just didn't see it anywhere else.
And you mentioned before having jazz in the evening, and then John Hegley standing up in the middle of the jazz and doing poetry.
Yeah.
I mean, for God's sake, poetry in Covent Garden.
But it worked because they made the space for him, and then he delivered it, and then they took the space back. And you know, there were ways of doing. I mean, that's how I learned that stuff. Learned that I'm not an expert. Let's get this completely straight. I am absolutely not an expert. But what I learned, rudimentary skills, was sorry, there's a big thing just rudimentary skills was, okay, so you need to do this and you need to do that, and you make choices. You know, either you're going to use your voice, that's one way of doing it, or you're going to do what Melvin used to do brilliantly, which is use your character. And you watched people come in. I mean, I think that was when something was working. It wasn't someone yelling or expanding or expounding to get people in. It was done because people were curious. It was like, oh my goodness, what's going on? I really want to go and see what's he doing? You know, what's she doing? You know, and they were the quieter shows, and there was always the big shows as well. And I think it was because there was much more of a mix. But
And maybe there's something about focus as well, you know.
I'll jump a bit ahead on Patti's story for a minute, because it fits in with this. This is Covent Garden performers not just doing their own show. So at one point, I maybe it was Patti and Eddie.
Are you talking about the Panto?
Yes.
Can we do Expo 88 first, and then we move?
Right.
It's quite quick after that. We move on to the Panto.
Look, we're running out of time.
Yeah. So let's just reframe where we are.
You wouldn't. 2 hours would be too short.
It goes too fast. So at this point now, we've created the show Petrushka. It's hitting Covent Garden. It's toured, and now you're selling the show, right?
I sold the show, took Andre and one other performer out from the original cast, and the rest were all students from a theatre school in Canada. And
who did you sell the show to? Just quickly, sorry to interrupt.
I just I knew that there was going to be this. Somebody said, it was one of those. Someone said, why didn't you go and talk to her? Here's her number. And it went from there. She said, oh, I don't know if I can do that. And one of the things that I really got about Canada was all these women that just said, yes, we'll do that. Yeah, let's try and do that. Yeah, and it wasn't England. It was Canada. And it was, yes, we can do that. We're not sure how we're going to do that, but we will make every effort to make sure this happens. And then we scrabbled around the way we did with Petrushka, but eventually we got there. Couldn't afford professionals, but we had these students and they were okay, they were good. And we put it together with Andre.
And this is in Vancouver for the Expo 86 Street Festival, right?
That's right. And then after that, I look back and I think, God, I was so bloody busy. It's extraordinary, isn't it? After that, I had this show that I'd written over a number of years.
Just before it goes, how did you feel about selling the show? Were you happy to let go of it at this point? Did you feel like it's your baby and now you need to let it go out into the world, or were you precious of it?
No, I directed it. I made some mistakes along the way, I'm sure. I know I made mistakes along the way, but it was a good show. It worked fine in that environment as well. So, and there it wasn't really street because we had times and places and,
So when you sold it, did you sell it as a piece to be done within the festival, or did you sell it to a production company to then take it on and tour it to other places?
No, I just did it as a piece to be done there.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
And so after that, were you done with it? Did you think that's enough? I don't want to produce this anymore.
I believe I was moving onwards. And we'll just leave it there.
Yeah.
There it is. There's Petrushka over there. And I had written a solo show, which was about a homeless woman who believed she was a witch and believed that she still possessed the power of eternal youth. And it's one of the things I'm most proud of in my life, actually, that I actually did this. I had an incredible couple that I'd met through the whole making the production. And he made me a mask that opened 3 ways, like that, 2, 3. And the mask and the whole costume was of an old, a very cartoon. She was very cartoon, this elderly woman, and she had a teapot which she hung onto here. and a shopping trolley, and the teapot occasionally talked. It was a glove puppet, and she talked about the fact that she was a witch, but she only had one last skill left, and her skill was that she could show you fleetingly her former glory, and the mask would flip open and the costume would transform, and underneath was a white face, red lips, black eyes, and and just to really bring this down a notch, and she would say, "And now I will perform the incredible tap dance of fire." Sorry. Which I duly did. And then I took it into the Fringe, and when I took it into the Fringe, I was able to actually do the actual script that I'd written on the street.
Because you had the focus.
Because you got the focus, and I could talk about people bending over my arm, and I could just see the shiny tops of their head and all of that, and her backstory of how she came to be there and who she was and blah blah blah. But I still finished it with the incredible tap dance of fire.
And was it flaming shoes? Was it the flaming ground? How did the fire come into it?
Fire and lots of tap dancing underneath.
And was this still at the sense of having a big finish? Was this to supply a big
moment?
Yeah.
The finale moment, yeah. And I was a star. It was amazing because I sort of suddenly got written up. I had no idea I was even going to do it, and suddenly I was like, "Oh, she's written." And all these people getting reviews, people coming to see me, and it was wonderful. And then I came home, and it wasn't. So there you go.
So you came back to London.
Yeah.
And so did you feel like a bit of a rock star in the Fringe, and everyone's doing reviews, and you're respected, you're loved, people asking for photos with you in the bars?
Yeah.
And so you come back to London, and it's back to being anonymous.
Yeah. Back to London. Where am I? Oh, let's go on, moving forward swiftly. So where are we now? Bloody hell, I've gone miles away. How much longer have we got? Where are we? Oh, not much longer.
And so did you create a magic tap dance?
Yeah. No. I came back to England. I got some more teaching work. And at this point, I have to say, by this stage in my life, without any question, I had a bit of a drink problem. It afflicts quite a lot of street entertainers. So here, on the.
And was that something of the culture? Everyone was drinking all the time and partying, and you were just part of that world?
No, I don't think so. I was much more of a solo drinker, I'm afraid. I was just, you would drink. Yeah. It was my way of settling down, I used to tell myself anyway. And Mark and I, when I came back, we were still doing jobs here and there, and with a lot of shows at Heaven.
And so you were very much a functional alcoholic.
That's exactly the term. Well done. I was very much a functional alcoholic, and things were, how can I say it? I mean, when Mel first met me, I was, I could down pints with the best of them. And I got into trouble, and I made some horrible mistakes, which, as the way of these things go, that, I regret. But you do shit when you're not in your right mind, unfortunately.
Yeah, you have poor judgment in that place.
Terrible, terrible judgment. Choices, bad choices. Yeah.
Well, to mention something positive.
Yeah.
An anecdote that I was told separate from you about you.
Oh no.
No, it's good. It's very good, and you already know it. there's a person who is probably one of the most well-known, successful close-up magicians in this country, called Faye Presto. I'm telling Patti's story for her, but it was an anecdote told to me by Faye Presto. She said she started, Patti can fill in on this, she started to be the driver for Patti and Mark Rowan.
Yeah.
And she said the start of her magical career was watching Mark and Patti, and that inspired her to become a magician. And she's still a magician to this day, and still successful to this day. And she put it down to having been with Mark and Patti.
She used to drive us all to all our gigs, and I used to be lying in the back of the van going, I can't cope. And she'd be going, oh, it's all right. And I think she took us to this one, which is, you know, you have anecdotes from places that you've been, but we did a place, oh no, it was the one just one story I wanted to tell, which was at the very end of punk, when it all got unbelievably fashionable and weird. People had like this particular band we were going to support. Their audience had spikes like out here and out here, and their hair was like rock solid, and and you had to be really careful walking around the room because you could get impaled on somebody's spike. And they were all so cool that they were ice cold. They were like, we don't move our muscles too much in case we hurt the makeup, you know. And this band went on before us, the support band, and they came off and they said they laid on the floor. They wouldn't even look at us. They were like devastated, absolutely devastated. And so Mark and I went on, and he fumbled. We did a lift at one point, and he fumbled it, and he went, "Oh fuck!" And the whole audience went, and they watched. And I honestly think it's, you know, you're talking about creativity. I don't think they'd ever seen anything like this. This was so far removed from. This was circus skills applied to a 15-minute slot, mixed up, mashed up with dance and mime and mask and makeup and costume. And it was, okay, you know, we've seen it move on. We've seen Cirque du Soleil take that, you know, that whole concept. But we were doing 15 minutes. We were taking it around different, very unlikely places, Pontins being one of them. And I swear to God that it was, oh, I'm going to sound like a proselytizing idiot here, but it was that thing of being able to take something that people would never see and place it in front of them and make them go, oh! You know, I think there's a real that I loved about performing. That was the thing that really got me going. It was that people just, yeah, it is an amazing thing to be able to do, to have people step out of their lives. Do you know what I mean? This is really cliched, but I'm going to say it anyway. Is that thing of being able to put something into people's lives that completely takes them outside of their own lives for that 15 minutes that they're totally entranced by a spectacle. That's an amazing thing to be able to do, I think.
Very much so. And it's not an easy thing to take all these different disciplines, and some of them more cultural and lofty and distant from people's experience than others, and make them digestible and bring people on that journey with you without feeling threatened by something they don't necessarily completely understand. This is fascinating, but we're approaching the end of time, and I might even, if you're happy to do it, give you a few minutes more so we can finish the conclusion.
Let's get the pantomime in.
Oh, yeah.
So
Because it's an example of where street performers actually got together and rehearsed. In small groups, they rehearsed.
No. Sometimes they rehearsed. Sometimes I'd turn up to a rehearsal space and there would be nobody. Nobody would be there. And I would stand there thinking, I'm sure we put this down on a list somewhere. I'm sure we put it down on a list. Not a soul. So this was Eddie wrote the script. I think the original idea, in fact, I'm almost sure it came from him. But Eddie and Rob, co-wrote.
So is this Eddie Izzard and Rob Ballard?
Eddie Izzard and Rob Ballard co-wrote the script. Eddie gave me the script and said, do what you want with it. You know, cut what you want, do what you want, whatever. And it was called Ella. And we had Petronella was our Ella. And
just before we go on to the details of it, why did you do it?
We did it in aid of crisis, and to raise funds for crisis.
Okay, so it was charity. You wanted to create a work
in the Duke of
for
York's
charity.
Theatre.
Well, the Duke of York's was one night, but we did it for, I can't remember how many days on the street, but we did I think we did 5 days. And we did an amazing thing. We did a transformation where I love Panto. I used to love Panto. I'm not sure if I love Panto anymore, but Cinderella, and I can't remember how we did it, but she had her hair all in little screwy knots, and where she had to do a transformation. So fairy godmother, I think was Patricia, wasn't it?
I don't remember.
Let's see, you're as bad as me. And there was Petronella in her ashes and whatever, and we did the boom. And I think all we did was surround her, and she scooted into the portico, round the outside of the crowd, right, while everyone's attention is here, and then appeared through the crowd in her costume with her hair in ringlets, all done, her thing ready for the ball. And it was just to be able to do that in open air is wonderful.
You told me you took 2 of the cast members to heaven.
No, not heaven. Not heaven. No, Madame Jojo's. We went, and Matt knows Madame Jojo's. We took.
I performed there before they closed it.
Yeah.
Incredibly high stage. Felt like I was going to fall off.
Yeah, right up there somewhere.
Yeah.
Took Patti and Dr. Stewart were both the Ugly Sisters. And so we had the most elegant Ugly Sisters you can possibly imagine, because I took them up to Madame Jojo's. So we researched, how to dress in women's clothes and do it well. Yeah, that was the idea. And it was a huge success. And we put a lot on. The other thing that Eddie and I did, which I was telling you, was that I think you called it the Street Performers Association, is that?
So the thing that manages the way that the street performers manage each other, because we have a kind of parallel system of power, so everyone votes and we run the space between everybody to great success, I'd argue. The body is called the Street Performers Association, and by the sounds of it, what you and Eddie Izzard did back in the day is you created the sort of the proto Covent Garden Street Performers Association, by the sounds of it.
So. We sat there and we worked out, what worked, what didn't work, how it would be administrated, who should administrate it, and we created a set of guidelines.
So the first question is, why did you do that?
Because I think that at the time, Covent Garden management was starting to take some serious liberties with.
In what way?
I think it was to do with where we were signing in and who was in charge of that, and it was all getting very bullyish and not very pleasant at all. And so we drank so much coffee. It's the only time in my life I've actually sat there and I did not at that point have anything to drink. We just drank coffee, Eddie and I. And it started off with about 8 of us around this table, ended up with Eddie and me still sitting there like 3 days later trying to get the wording right, because it had to be spot on or otherwise it could be pulled around legally, and we wanted it to be an absolutely right and tight document. And we did that.
And so when you just before you go on, when you created that document, what do you do with it then?
I think it was handed into Covent Garden as these are our stipulations. This is what we as street entertainers require.
And did all the other performers co-sign it, or were people?
Yeah,
did people
I
elect
honestly
you as
don't
reps?
remember the end of it, but yeah, probably for sure.
I remember going with Eddie to negotiate with Covent Garden management.
There you go. That was it.
And it wasn't long after that that Covent Garden management, with that at that time was led by Peter Scott, gave us quite a lot of money to run festivals in Covent Garden, which was quite amazing. And Patti, along with a few others, we organised a whole bunch of festivals for about 2 years. Was it, Patti?
I think so. May have been longer. Things start to get a bit of a blur at this point in my history, but highlights, and seriously, were a bit of a blur. But highlights were rigging aerial performers into the roof of Covent Garden and having them swing over the. Is it still there? The crusting pipe. Is that still there?
No, the crusting pipe's gone. I think. Oh no, it might still be there. It down in the
where the classical musicians play.
Yes, yeah, it is still there. Yeah.
Okay, and they were aerial theatre as well. There was some really, really good performers, and we also did a magic festival.
Yeah.
And I do believe that was when Faye Presto cut me into 3 pieces, as I remember rightly. I think it may have been another occasion, and the other highlight of that was, if anyone remembers him, is Ali Bongo performing on the piazza. And Ali we were talking about it, he was just one of these completely eccentric, extraordinary magicians who, if you never got a chance to see him, you missed something exceptional. And because of colour and the way he was and his eccentricity, he pulled a crowd that day. Completely.
Ali Bongo was the chief advisor to Paul Daniels through his television career.
Was he?
Wow.
Yeah, so just so you know.
He was a very skilled, very, very skilled magician, but his show didn't look like he was. He was one of those performers.
I have to remind you.
A bit like Rumpold.
I have to remind you of something, because this was an amusing thing for me. We were all involved in creating the American independence. Remember?
Yes.
So we created a show. Patti probably did a lot of the choreography and stuff of American independence, and we got booked to do it in a shopping centre in Walthamstow.
Oh, the majesty of our lives.
And there were complaints to the management of this shopping centre. Why were they allowing anti-British propaganda to be performed in their shopping centre?
I think we did. What was it called when the tea party, the tea crates,
the Boston Tea Party.
Boston Tea Party. That's what we did. Yeah. In our own inimitable way. Anyway, can I just wind this up with where I am now? Move on. So now I'm the photographer. I also don't drink anymore, which is quite handy, really, because it's a bit difficult focusing if you can't actually
Can I
see.
ask you just before we close up? Can I ask you why you stopped drinking?
Because my life was a mess. Because I couldn't do it anymore. And that was what I said the night I said, I can't do this anymore. It was like a circular thing of go out, get drunk, come back, go to work, go out, get drunk, come back, go out, get drunk, come back. It was monotonous. It's that stage of, if anyone who's ever been there who may be watching this, it's that stage of drunkenness that is just boring as hell.
And was it damaging your ability to produce by that point? Because you were functional most of your life.
I hadn't had a creative idea for about 2 years by then. Not an original creative idea. I knew I was in trouble. Yeah, so I stopped. I can remember about, I must have been about 4 months after I stopped drinking. And I had an idea. I was like, yes, they're there again. It's going to be all right, So, yeah, no, I haven't drunk for about 25 years now, which is
Okay,
pretty cool.
and so you became a photographer, right?
I am now a photographer, and I'm also a motorbike rider, which I was for quite a long time when Melvin knew me as well. And I'm doing an exhibition on women on motorbikes. I've got I'm in 3 exhibitions this year. I've slogged away at it. I got married a while ago, and sadly last year my husband, lovely man, died of lung cancer. So, life goes on, life and death. And I think this project was probably born out of grief, to be honest. I threw myself into something in order to exercise my brain to stop it from grieving, really. I've travelled, spent time. I spent 3 months photographing for a charity in India, the Dalits, the untouchables in India. I went around villages taking shots of people. And I took a bunch of photos of women who have AIDS. No one will ever see those pictures. They can never ever be published, but they were for the women so that they'd got pictures of themselves because they didn't have pictures taken of them. So that story goes something like, husband has affair, gets AIDS, gives it to wife, wife gets thrown out because wife has AIDS. That's sort of the way the thing goes. So there was that. And then I went to, we lived in Thailand for a couple of years, purely so I could get in and out to Burma, because Burma's on the Thai border. And Aung San Suu Kyi had just been released from house arrest then. And of course, everything has changed since then. But at the time I was in Burma, everyone was like, it's all going to be fantastic. We're moving onwards. It's all going to be great, blah, 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 blah. How the world has changed since then. But I have to say, amazing people, hospitable, joyous, happy. And yeah, really, really interesting traveling. And I've ridden my motorbike all over Europe, up and down mountains. And I'm going to the Pyrenees this June, so that I can, sorry, this is a bit morose and I hope it doesn't bring everybody down, but so that I can scatter James's ashes in a place that he really loved riding his bike. So I'm going to go and do that with 3 other people on motorbikes. And then ride back up through France. And life is good. And I'm old now. Because look how long after I was born, you were born.
Very much so. You know, I was born 30 years after you were born, and you know, long after you'd already formed your career.
Yeah. I tell you one bit that we did actually, just going back to creativity.
Yeah.
I worked with a guy called Ralph, and he had always wanted to do. Don't ask me why. Isn't it? People are weird. We are weird, aren't we? He'd always wanted to do an escape from a plastic dustbin, as you do.
Sounds like a reasonable idea.
So what we did was, and again, it's the nature of how my brain works. I don't know, but so we put together these two characters. Mark was this old, withered character who was on the end of a chain that I had, and I was this sort of, I don't know, Havisham-esque, sort of powdery, dusty ringlets, dust falling off all over you touch me and I drop dust everywhere. And we walked very slowly, and that's how we got our crowd. That's all we did. We were a spectacle, and we just walked incredibly slowly. We were talking about, what works, what doesn't work. And we finally would get to the inside pitch, and then we would set it up. And we did nothing. I swear to God, we did nothing. All we did was get there slowly, and then we would set up. We had plumbing rods that you screwed together, and I had the edge of the curtain that the plumbing rod had to go into. So Ralph, had the what was now a very bendy thing, which he was trying to, and I was underneath trying to get that type of stuff to get the thing.
Yeah.
And then eventually that was a curtain, and we'd put Mark, Ralph into the dustbin.
Yeah.
It took a long time. This was all very, very slow. And then we padlock the dustbin up. I don't know why I had this aim in life. And you'd hear occasional groans coming from the dustbin. And then I'd get a volunteer and we'd pull up this curtain. And when we dropped it, he was out. And it was like 10 seconds or something.
So is taking something which is usually beautiful and very high status and trashing it up and making it grimy, basically, right? But isn't it wonderful with that you can create a spectacle with gentle, slow progression? It doesn't have to be like this.
No, it's the antithesis of come on, come in. It's the absolute opposite of that. It's almost saying, don't bother watching. We're just making our way this way, and we're so weird and so odd that people are going, good Lord, what's that? I want to go and follow that. Yeah.
Exactly. So, Patti, we've already gone over time. It's been wonderful hearing your stories. It really has. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've got two last questions for you. So, first one, if you had to speak to a young performer nowadays about to start their journey, be it on the stage or on the street, is there any advice you'd give them?
Good Lord, I've never been asked that. Oh my God, learn your skill, learn it well. Learn a couple of other skills along the way. Always be curious. Always try and experiment. Always keep developing. And when it becomes boring, change it. Do something different. Move it forward, whatever it is you're doing. And yeah, that's about it, I suppose. I'm not very wise, so I honestly don't know.
I disagree. I think that's very, very, very good advice. The other thing is, anything you want to say to all the people you've met on your journey through this world, particularly people who are watching right now, people in the street fraternity, performers around the world?
Yeah, it's been It's been a blast, you know. It really has. And actually, it has been a blast over the years. It's been extraordinary. Some of the film people I met, I will always just think, wow, how do you get to be so clever? And some of the really imaginative street entertainers, you know, it's just like hats off to you, you know, keep going. There were lots of, one of the things I loved about Europe was that there was always good European festivals that people could work at. And I don't know if they existed. I'm so out of that world now that I honestly, you know, don't know as much as I would like to. But oh, I just thought I'd mention this. I am not in a photo booth. Just so you know, everybody, this is not a photo booth. This is a photo background that I've got rigged up just for this. Thank you. And I just want to thank people for putting up with me at times, and because there were times when I was a real pain in the arse, and also thank people for the good times, because the good ones were really good.
Thank you, Patti. Mel, is there anything you'd like to ask?
No, not at
No,
all.
you happy? Well, I suppose I'll say this. Thanks, Mel, for sitting on the interview. As always, you're a lovely person to have here. Patti, I've said this once, I'll say it again. Absolute pleasure listening to your story. Really, thank you so much for coming on and sharing it with us. Everyone who's watched, guys, thank you for watching again. I'll see you the next time we do another inductee to the archive. And from me, I'd like to say goodbye, everybody. Have a really nice night and have a good life. See you later, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. It's taken